Andrea Waltz, it has been a long time since I've seen you last, and I've got some questions for you on behalf of all of the listeners right now. And the first question is, when it comes to sales in a business, what is business excellence?
When it comes to sales in business, what is business excellence? Oh my gosh, that is a that is a big question. Oh, where do we begin? Um, well, I think understanding the problem that you solve for your customer,
Cool.
the way in which you solve it, um, and are you always solving it in the best? I like what Tim Ferriss says. He uses the phrase most simple and elegant solution. And I love that. So, are you able to solve that problem in the most simple and elegant way for your customer? Are you there for your customer? And and do you follow up and keep your promises? I mean, excellence is so, I think, so multi-layered. And I think it's also like a goal that it's not really sought after as much as it should be. You know, today it seems like everybody's interested in delivering things fast
Right.
and trying to do things as efficiently as possible, and that's great. But you really don't hear people talking about making things better. Um, in improving customer experience, improving customer service. So, I love that you brought up the term excellence because I actually think it's kinda missing today.
Really good point. Maybe it is, and maybe that's the opportunity for the people that are listening in right now. I like your answer. You've given 5 solid points there. Excellence in sales in business is about understanding the problem in depth and detail, finding a way that you can solve it. It's got to be simple. It's got to be elegant. I think you might be referring to the process there.
Mhm.
And there, I've made a note of, are you there? There, I can't remember exactly what you said there. So maybe you can elaborate on the fourth point. But follow up and keep your promises was the fifth point. What was that point on? Are you there?
Um, yeah, what was I
Right.
saying about that? I don't know, I don't know.
Let's go with a four. Let's go with the four there.
Okay.
All right. So understanding the problem. So I'm a salesperson. I want to become excellent at understanding the problem. How do I do it? How do I do it?
Um, you've gotta ask questions. I think questions and I think this is the hidden issue with sales, James, and that is that everyone thinks that sales is how you come across. I mean, that's important. How you present. Are you charismatic? Do you have all of the answers? And there's that famous, and Richard and I talk about this in our latest book, When They Say No. There's kind of this ubiquitous idea when you interview people for a sales position. And it was actually in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street as well. They joke about it. Sell me this pen, right? Go ahead and sell me this pen. And so the candidate is supposed to sell the interviewer a pen. And
Yep.
normally, what everybody does is, well, this pen is got black ink and you can put it in your
Yeah.
pocket. It's beautiful. It's manufactured so well and blah blah blah. And that's actually the opposite of what sales is now. That was the old school sales of presenting. The new school sales, and when it comes to solving a problem, and this is where you have to be willing to ask the tough questions up front, is asking questions. And it's asking questions of your customers throughout the process, but it starts with asking prospects questions to figure out if they're qualified or not qualified for what you have, whether you can solve that problem or not, and then asking your customers questions to really understand the problem. And probably the best question to do that, and this comes from Alexandra Carter. She wrote a book called Ask for More. And she says the best question that you should ask, and it's funny because it's technically not a question, but it starts with the words tell me. Tell me about your business. Tell me what's going on. Tell me if you are there to install a patio screen at someone's house. Tell me your vision for this back patio. Tell me what you want it to look like. Tell me what you want it to feel like. You know, how does it how is it supposed to be for you, right? And so if you can just ask a grand tell me question, then drill down, then you can learn everything that you need to know.
I'm going to put it to test. I'm going to do it on you.
Okay.
There you go. All right. Is there a mindset shift to go through, to becoming a sort of person that asks questions, and I'm guessing that listens intently afterwards?
Yeah, listening is such a hard skill because we're taught to present. We want to look good and we want to
Oh,
share all of our
salespeople are taught to
expertise.
present.
What was that?
Salespeople are taught to present.
Exactly. Salespeople are taught to present. Yes.
So, but do you have to go through a mind shift to become the type of person that asks questions?
I think it comes down to uh, awareness. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. I
What,
just don't think. I think people, generally speaking, it's funny that you bring this up because I just posed this question in my Facebook group yesterday. I said, if I were to do a poll and ask you if you think you're a good listener, most everyone, like if it was, yes, I'm an excellent listener, I'm a good listener, I'm an okay listener, I'm a poor listener, who would pick poor listener? I mean, everyone likes to think, no, I'm a good listener. And so, James, I think, yes, there's probably some kind of mindset shift, but I think it's really having self-awareness.
well, that's the starting point to emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Indeed, yes. It's having
Um,
that awareness, and then when someone points it out to you, it's being willing to work on that as a skill, and all change comes from having that willingness, being honest with yourself, that's part of that self-awareness is being willing to and being honest to see where you may have a defect, where there may be something that you need to work on.
That's really nice. So understanding the problem, this is going to move you toward excellence in that area. Asking questions, listening, being incredibly honest throughout that whole sort of part of the sales process. Let's go on to the second thing that you said. Then you've got to have a way of solving it. So how do you develop excellence in the solution? Is that right?
Yeah.
In solving that problem.
Right. So it comes down to think of it like your job is as an officiator of a marriage. You want to marry your
Okay.
customer to a solution. And
Nice.
so kind of the phraseology like that I don't even know if phraseology is a word that I like to use is to make sure that people understand why you're suggesting what you're suggesting. And this really helps build trust because I think everyone has a healthy skepticism for everything these days, everything they hear. But if you can use this one phrase, this will greatly build trust because it will show that you're listening, and it will also show that you've understood what the person just said. And so the phrase is, well, based on everything that you've just told me, here's what I would recommend. So using my example of helping somebody build out their screen. And the reason I use that example, James, is because we live here in Florida and everyone in Florida has these, it's funny, I used to think they were silly. And now that I live here, I love mine. Everybody has a back patio and they build these giant screens so that you can sit out on your back patio and not get attacked by all the bugs that we have here in Florida.
Right.
And so we're all in, and they call it a bird cage. So you're sitting in this bird cage. So if you were selling this, you would want to say, well, based on everything that you told me, here's what I suggest. I suggest we build it this high, and I suggest we build it this wide because you said this. And I suggest we put the door over here because you said this. And I suggest that we do this and this. And you kind of go through everything that the person described. And this works for, I think, any given product, any solution, is you feed back to the person everything that you heard and you attach that to everything that you're now recommending. I mean, this takes practice, it does definitely require listening.
Yeah.
And going back to what we were talking about earlier, Kind of in the olden days, salespeople were just taught to go out and present. So they go out and they just make a presentation and they want the customer to say yes and they want it to be easy. But these days, people want things. Obviously, they want things personalized to them. But this is the differentiator. This is when you listen to people and you can marry the problem and to the solution that you have, and you can do it in a simple and elegant way by asking a couple really good questions. Then I think it makes you look like a trusted advisor, and that's the goal. One of the things that Richard and I teach is a framework, um, that we call it. Well, we don't technically have really a name for it, but it's really a kind of a four quadrant matrix, and we look at results versus relationships. And when you take those two concerns and you kind of cross reference them against each other, there are people that have a high concern for results, but a lower concern for building relationships.
Yep.
There's somebody who has on the opposite side, and this is actually a lot of salespeople. They have a very high concern for relationships, which is great, but a lower concern for results. So they tend to be more order takers. They don't
Mhm.
ask the tough questions. And then you have somebody who doesn't care about either. We won't talk about that person. But having a high concern for both relationships and results, meaning that when you do make your recommendations, you don't sell from your own wallet. You make the absolute best possible recommendation for that customer without prejudging what they might do, decide, or spend. And you're willing to push through the no if you get that no and you know that it is the right solution. And so this is where go for no kind of weaves its way in this moment and throughout this whole process. But the idea that the person may say, well, I don't want to spend that much money, and you have to go back to, listen, if you want the result or if you want to solve this problem the way that you told me, and this is where you have to have the courage to become an advocate, then I highly recommend you do this. Otherwise, and be an advisor and explain why it could come back and why you might be disappointed with your choice in the future.
Some incredible things
I
of
know
what you
this is a
just
lot.
shared
Yeah,
here.
I know I kind of
No,
went
no,
down
no,
a
yeah,
path.
yeah, it's not a lot. It's exactly right. You stay on this now because we all want to keep getting this insight. So let's just have a look at a couple of things that you said. The first thing was, it's a bit Simon Sinek, wasn't it? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Mhm.
Understand the why of the solution. Help them understand why you're suggesting what you're suggesting. And then based on what you've told me, suggest that we should look at this, or this, or do you narrow it down like that? Give options?
Yeah, I think options are powerful.
Hmm.
And if you have options, if there are options, keeping it simple, right? We don't want to a confused mind never buys, but I think options are powerful, and giving people, making people feel they have agency and they have a choice, but still like, and usually there is more than one solution. So there's nothing wrong with giving options. I'm a big fan of it actually, and I think
Well,
from a
that's
go for
good.
no standpoint. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk, you be the one that's you're the subject matter expert here. So options are powerful. A confused mind never buys. It's so true. Then, feeding back, paraphrasing what they've said, demonstrate you've listened, the whole results relationship piece. That's definitely going to help the listeners solve a few problems a little bit better. Now, in the middle of all of that, you did use the phrase simple and elegant again. And yet, that's what you said. Actually, that was the third point of what excellence in sales is. It's simple and elegant. So, talk us through simple first and elegant second.
Yeah, I don't know that there's, all that much to it except, well, I guess there is a lot to it. Well, first of all, the first way to simplify is to not overuse jargon that your customer doesn't
Yeah.
understand. That's a common, right? A common mistake. Um, and to not overcomplicate it by bringing in things that aren't relevant. Like, stay relevant to what the person is asking for. This is kind of a classic thing that can happen in selling another product, where you may have a product and you may, as a salesperson, you may want to show all of the features and benefits of this
Yeah.
product and all of the things that it does. But if the person hasn't brought it up as an issue, then sometimes that can actually backfire, because they look at that and they think, well, I don't need that and I don't need that. And so now I'm overpaying. Now I'm buying something I really don't need. That's why it's so important to stay close to, and I guess this is would be the elegant part, to stay close to and listen closely to what that person is telling you, and to focus on those things. And you don't have to bring in all of the things that are potentially just irrelevant and will confuse or complicate it.
Yeah, look, cut the jargon. Look, as soon as you said stay relevant, because I'm guessing there could be a temptation sometimes to just in the heat of excitement give all of the potential options that's available, and without considering, actually, is this really relevant?
Exactly. And then, James, I think there's something else that I see, and this isn't traditional sales. These are people selling a service, oftentimes something that they do. It may be someone selling, let's say, proofreading and editing,
Yeah.
or maybe it's like web design, or it's some kind of specialty expertise that this person has. And I actually encountered this yesterday, and I wanted to start coaching her, and I realized I couldn't do that, because that would have been completely rude of me. But it's not really understanding and having clarity on what your offer is. So you can kind of, in traditional sales, most people, they have products to solve the problem, and
Yeah.
it's easy. I think when you're a solopreneur, when you're somebody who maybe you're selling coaching services, it doesn't matter. But the more that the solution isn't necessarily just, yes, here's the solution, it comes in this box, right?
Less tangible.
The more that it's based in me delivering you a service, then it becomes kind of amorphous. And getting your head around exactly what your deliverables are and what that package looks like, and we're going to have X conversations over this amount of time, or I will help you, I will do this, it's a per project basis, and I charge by the page, but here's everything that you get, and based on what you told me, blah blah blah, this is how it could work. um, Having real good clarity on what your offering is so important for solopreneurs as well. I see people say things to customers because they say it to me or prospects, and it's like, well, I just talked to the person and we kind of work it all out. And that, I don't know how you operate like that as a business owner. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, there's no structure there. And now you're reinventing the wheel with every single person, and every single conversation you have there, is different, and you have no way to prepare for that conversation. It's always going to be unique and different. What we want to focus on is the fact that the problems that our customers have are different, unique, and that's okay. That part of the conversation should change, and it can change. But what you bring and what you offer shouldn't be all over the board.
I like it. I mean, for the people that are offering a service, should they be even more focused on the deliverables at this stage? Providing that simple solution. These are the deliverables. These are the options.
I think it's okay to, for sure. I think people want to, I look at my buying behavior informs kind of the way I like to teach sales. And I teach much more, just to be clear, mindset than I do sales process. We're talking a little bit about getting into the process now. But I think that if you were to call me and say, Andrea, I want to talk to you about a speaking engagement we have. And I said, well, James, we do speak, but it really varies, and the length of time varies, and depends on the audience, and it kind of depends on where in the world. And it also depends on how I'm feeling that day and what I want to talk about. And you'd say, I need structure, right? I want to buy X for this problem. I've
Yeah.
got this audience. I want this topic. Can you do it? Yes or no? And so that's what I mean by just making sure that your offers have clarity. I think that lends itself to a simple and elegant solution. That's the part where you explain what you do and how it can help your customer.
Yeah, I mean, just elaborate. Tell me more about the elegance.
Oh, about the elegance. Well, I think that comes down to having clarity on your offerings and being able to explain them simply, and going back to, that phrase that I used earlier, um, marrying those two and not bringing in a bunch of stuff that's irrelevant,
Yeah, the officiator of a marriage.
right?
Um, right, your last point on excellence when it comes to sales was the follow up and keeping your promises. Tell us more about those.
Oh my gosh, keeping your promises. Well, we've all purchased things where we've been lied to by a salesperson. Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it was because they knew they weren't going to get the sale without, um, you know, fibbing and saying
Yeah.
it will be there on Monday. Don't worry. Monday comes. Where is it? You call the
Do you
company.
reckon most people are dissatisfied with that? I was promised this and I didn't get it. Do you reckon that's more common, or do you reckon people keeping the promises is more common?
Hmm. I like to think that human nature is on the good side. So hopefully it's more common that people keep their promises. However, um, I think we hear about the failed promises
Yes,
more,
we do. Yeah.
right? And that's, I mean, typically when you look at any kind of review online for anything, you're going to see the people that were super, super so thrilled with the experience that they felt compelled to leave a review. And then you're going to hear from the people that were really upset and
Yeah.
everything went wrong. You don't seem to get in the middle. It's kind of, so you have to keep that in mind when you look at those things. But James, the something else that we should dig into here with this idea of promises, and that is that whether you're promising that you can solve the problem or not, whether you're promising delivery at this time, the point is, with from a go for no standpoint, I'll bring that back into the conversation, and that is being okay with if you can't solve the problem, if it's not a good
Right.
fit, right? You have to be willing to hear no or even say no upfront and take the loss. And that's, I think, unfortunately, what happens is we all want to make the sale, right?
Yeah.
And if you, I remember somebody calling me, I don't know, it's been a couple years now, and they said, we are looking for a speaker on negotiation. And go for no is very closely related to negotiation, because we teach the mindset of understanding that no is part of the process. And of course, in negotiation, it's all about moving people from no to yes, right? Each party is saying no, and we want to somehow get them to collaborate and somehow get them to both say yes and agree on whatever the issue is.
Mhm.
And so it's very similar. But they were like, and there's nothing a speaker loves more, just like any business owner, than an inbound lead that came out of the blue where it could be a lucrative and easy opportunity, right? And it's like,
It's the dream. That's the dream. Yeah.
it's the dream, right? So I'm listening to them describe, that it's negotiation and it's an hour. And I'm thinking, could I pull off an hour of negotiation? Probably, but it's just not my expertise. And so I couldn't do it. And I'm listening to them. And then I said, based on everything you described to me, as much as I would love to do this with you all, yeah, I'm not a good fit. Really, you need to find a negotiation expert, negotiation speaker. So I turned that business down. And that's what I mean by being willing to say no. And sometimes we have to do that, and it can be a little painful,
It
but
can
it's,
be. I mean, some people are desperate to get the sales. Yeah. Is that why they fall for the trap of over promising?
oh, I think absolutely. Yeah, and it sadly, I mean, sometimes it's just the reality. They are desperate. Sometimes it just comes from a lack mentality. And one of the things that we say often is a good no is better than a bad yes. And every business owner, I think alive, who's been in business for longer than maybe 30 days, has taken business, has taken a yes when it should have been a no. Either they should have said no, or the customer somebody should have said no in the process. And then the deal was difficult. It wasn't a good fit. The relationship wasn't a good fit. The product wasn't right and usually it's because the salesperson didn't have the courage in that moment to say, it's not right. It's not a good fit.
Or the other is overselling. Yeah, they've oversold.
Or they've oversold, and that's a
That's
great
not
point
a good
too. Yeah.
yes. It's definitely not a good yes, is it?
No, and sadly that comes from, I think, just having a lack mentality, having that lack mindset. I have been there before. I mean, I have wanted, those sales and have
Yeah.
wanted that to happen. And so, yeah, you are tempted to say yes to things that you shouldn't.
Hmm. Yeah, and let's just talk about the follow-up then. And specifically, I want to mention speed of follow-up, because there's nothing worse in a sales cycle when you're waiting to hear back and you've not heard anything back yet.
Yeah.
So
Well,
tell us more about excellence in follow-up.
uh, it's baffling to me. And this starts at the beginning of the process with calling people back in a timely manner who've reached out to you. So if
Yeah,
it's an inbound lead or you're working with somebody, responsiveness is huge. Responsiveness, of course, builds trust.
it is a point gain, a massive point gain.
Absolutely. And I think there's the follow up during the process that must be timely, so
Yep.
that you do have that trust and the person feels supported and that they feel like they're there. There's also, though, the follow-up when someone says no, and there's that follow-up as well, which is kind of a separate point. This is when we didn't get the sale. This is staying engaged with somebody even though they maybe told you no. Are they still a qualified prospect for you? Do you still have a solution that could solve their problem? Perhaps, and this is something that happens a lot in many types of businesses. The person is, um, they're fearful of change, right? They're hesitant to change. The status quo, and this happens, of course, in a lot of B2B situations. So the status quo is always easier you want to find a simple and elegant solution, the status quo. That way we don't have to do anything. We don't have to experience any pain. There's no pain of
Yeah.
change. And so as a salesperson who cares about results and relationships, follow-up becomes huge to be an advocate for helping to push that person off the fence of indecision and making that change.
What do you think stops people from following up properly and doing it right? Is it fear? Is it fear?
So I deal with this in my groups all the time. And I think there's I think there's the one big thing is people have a tremendous hesitation, fear, call it fear, about looking pushy. And they
Right.
think that following up makes them look pushy. They makes them look desperate. And you couple that with not knowing how to do it, then it's a recipe for absolutely not doing it because there's no comfort. They don't know
You're
how.
fearing it and you don't know what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's go there, because there's a lot of people that have got a lot of head trash about being perceived as a pushy salesperson, like you've said, or being just perceived as generally a salesperson, and they're uncomfortable with. So how do you start to overcome that head trash? Let's say I'm one of them. What do I do to start overcoming that?
So if you've never been persistent, then having me um, kind of preach at you, you need to be persistent. Persistence works, follow up works,
Yeah.
and you've never experienced that, then it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. Once you follow up and it works, just even one time, you then have the epiphany of, oh, I got rewarded. I followed up and this actually works. So one of the favorite quotes that Richard, I think, said this is that's the thing about persistence is if you're persistent, then you learn it works. If you aren't persistent, it never will. So it really is a chicken and
It is, but I believe everybody has been persistent at something in their lives.
so maybe the idea is tap into and
Yeah.
try to remember when that worked in some other
So
area of your
what have
life.
you been really persistent in? And, let's go back there. How can you transfer that kind of thinking into this kind of challenge that you've currently got in sales?
It's a great point, because really that's a life skill, right? Persistence is in every area of your life. You have to be
Well,
persistent.
and it's widely accepted that children, so we've all been children, they are persistent.
Yes.
They don't give up on things. The average adult gives up before 10 attempts. Yet, my little boy who's practicing keeping the ball up in the air in the back garden, he could be there for an hour. He's trying to get to 15 or in the air, and he just didn't give up. Yeah, an
Right.
adult try it once or twice. Oh, that's too hard work.
Yeah.
So we've all done it. Everyone has got the persistent gene. It's there.
Absolutely. I believe the same thing with courage, which is having the courage to ask and go for no in the first place, and to start off a sales conversation. But so your point with the head trash is a great one, and I think that once, if you can find that example, if you don't have one, if you can find that example in your life and apply it, and then the other thing is to just this is I think so important with follow up and any other skill in sales. No one wants to look foolish or have that awkward conversation. And this is something that I teach our people who go through our Go for No challenge. I tell them, I want you to make a follow up call, but fail at it. Like if you I don't want you to come back with a success. I don't care about the success. I want you to experience. Now, oftentimes they do, because, they want to do a good job and it's
Mhm.
actually not that difficult. But you have to embrace the awkwardness. You have to embrace that failure. If you're not willing to practice and feel weird and fall on your face and not sound great, then you're never going to get beyond this. It's like trying anything. If a kid's not willing to fall off a bike at least once, then learning to ride a bike is going to be almost impossible, because you're always going to tip over at least once, even if you have training wheels. And so our obsession as adults with perfection, our obsession with not making fools of ourselves in our own head, other people don't care. I called a woman a couple months ago, and I was nervous about it, and I really could tell how, I was nervous in my body, and I was
Right.
breathing and doing some of the things that I know that I should do to calm down. And in my head, I said, she will probably hear that you're nervous. This will probably be obvious. And I just talked myself off the ledge and said, who cares? It doesn't matter. I have to make this call, even though I was nervous doing it. And I went through with it. Totally worth it. But I was still, I let that kind of lack of confidence really play in my mind. And we've got to just embrace being okay with just being okay. Also, James, for follow up, preparation is so key. Keep it simple and elegant. I teach when I teach people to follow up, you can follow up and just do two things. There's only two things that you need to do to follow up. And those two things are: one, share some tiny fact about yourself. And then the second thing is share some tiny fact or question or something that would be relevant and important for the person you're following up with to know. So it might sound something like this. If I was following up with you, James, to speak at an event, I'll use myself as an example because this is what I might say. Um, James, hope everything is going. I'm leaving you a voicemail. James, hope everything is going well. Richard and I just got back from speaking to 2,000 people in Calgary. It was an amazing event. I've been thinking about you. I wanted to follow up because I know that you have a podcast, and I thought perhaps you were looking for guests, and you might be interested. I hope everything's going well for you. Let me know how your podcast is doing. Let me know how I might be able to rate and review it. Click. So a little fact about me up front, and then what's going on with you and how can I help you? So keep it as simple, as short, as elegant. That was a little bit long and you know why it was long and wordy? Because I wasn't prepared. But had I just taken a moment to prepare, it would have been shorter.
That was beautiful. I want to give you like a round of applause. Like, I mean, this really good thing. You talk about keeping it simple and elegant. Two things. Some tiny fact about yourself. Just been speaking at 2,000 people at an event. Thought about you. A tiny fact or a question that's relevant to the person that you're with. And then what you said, actually, that was a bit long. And that was because I didn't prepare. If I had prepared, that would have been even better.
Mm-hmm.
That was really powerful. The listeners absolutely are going to love that. Now, you mentioned something maybe 10 minutes ago. And I wrote this question down as you said it. Is selling an indispensable life skill? Is it?
Oh, absolutely. There's so many benefits to learning how to sell.
Why?
Oh my gosh. You learn how to, well, we've talked about so many of them, right? You learn how to listen.
Yeah.
It certainly builds your confidence.
It does, doesn't it? Does it build your confidence more than anything?
I
It's
think.
up there, isn't it?
Yes.
Achievement in sport and, hobbies and all that kind of thing is good. And career development and progression and promotions and all stuff. But
so I say this a lot. I share this a lot. That one time I interviewed Jack Canfield for a documentary movie that Richard and I were making. And
right.
he's the author of The Success Principles.
Yeah.
And he told me in this interview, and I'll never forget it, he said, self-confidence is the successfully survived risk. And so the reason why sales is such a great life skill, and the reason why confidence it comes from sales, is that sales is that's all it is, a successfully survived risk. And even if you fail, you still succeed because you learn something. So it's just one successful, meaning you don't die, right? So it's just one successfully survived risk after the other. You say, I don't want to make this call. And then you say, my voice is going to shake. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to sound like a fool. And you make the call anyway. Successfully survived risk, no matter how, right? No matter how that call goes. So that's one. You say, I'm not good at asking people questions. It feels to me like prying, or I don't want to be pushy. And so you do your best to learn how to ask questions. Again, another successfully survived risk. You follow up. You use my formula. It doesn't go perfectly. Maybe you're too long. Who cares? Successfully survived risks. So your confidence is constantly being built because you have challenges that you're overcoming. And that's what I think makes sales such an incredible life skill. Plus you learn, you do learn problem solving. You learn how to be adaptable, because in sales, like life, there are always problems. There are always things that come up, and you've got to figure out how to solve them. You've got to learn how to negotiate. So there's just, the list is endless.
If there was no problem, there would be no sale.
That's
that. Exactly. They wouldn't need it. I mean, all salespeople need problems, but I do like that point on Mr. Canfield. Self-confidence is successfully survived risk. Means you can't have confidence if you don't take risk. You've got to be prepared to risk.
That's right. Exactly.
You want to be confident? You've got to have courage to take the risk.
Resilience. I mean, you don't build resilience without adversity. A tree's roots and a tree becoming strong is part of that, is because it has builds resilience against the wind. Everything that we do in sales is confidence building. It's a challenge. It builds resilience.
Yeah, but even wider than that, there is an argument to say that literally everything in life is sales. Which restaurant shall we go to? I want to go here. My wife wants to go here. Who's going to sell the best?
That's right.
The kids, they've got to eat the dinner before they get their ice cream. There's got to be some sales in the communication really going on. Because it's just influence, isn't it? Just influence.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's influence. It's being able to negotiate and skillfully handle a no. And of course, when we're negotiating with our significant other or kids or family members or friends, we don't take the no so personally, and we certainly don't take it as the end of a relationship. If it was, no one would be married.
That's true, isn't it? I mean, you get a no for your loved ones, your kids, or your life partner. You don't take it to heart and crumble under it. You get over it pretty quick.
That's right. And you have to. That's what you learn.
Well, come on, let's talk about this go for no thing then.
Okay.
Of course, I've heard you talk about that before. My favorite bit, honestly, we did a session. You were presenting to a huge audience of ours, and you put up this picture, and there was 3 ingredients on the picture. There was a person, a stick figure, you, and then to the left of the person there was the word no, and to the right of the person there was the word yes. So there's 3 ingredients. And when you stood in the middle, and sometimes you get a yes, you get a high elation, and sometimes you get a no, you get the low drop. It's the worst place to be. Yet, if we just remodel the ingredients and we put you here, we put the no here, and then we put the yes here. Same 3 ingredients. We've just got a different model. It just means that you got to go through a no to get to a yes. And then there's no ups and downs. We can handle it.
Right. Yeah, that is the failure success model. And I think I'm glad you brought that up because it's the foundation of understanding and having a good go for no philosophy. Because without it, if I were to just tell you, James, go out, be willing to hear no. Like just be willing to hear no all the time from everybody. In fact, go for no, start asking more people, start asking, prospecting, start talking to people as much as you can. And in the beginning, you'd say, okay, I can do that. But then quickly the no's would become discouraging. And you would think to yourself, does this work? This feels like I'm doing something wrong. I shouldn't be hearing no. And so the failure success model is so important because what we have come to understand, and we see this with all incredibly successful people, is that no is part of the process. That in fact, you are on one side, failure, rejection, hearing the word no is in the middle, and the success is on the other side. You have to move through those no's. I remember a few months ago, Elon Musk put up, they did some kind of big rocket launch and it exploded. And his tweet right after was basically something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, it was like, this is fantastic. We learned so much. And he is just a person who, and I believe this lends itself to a lot of his success, who doesn't let failure stop him. He experiences it. I'm sure it was incredibly disappointing and expensive, but they learn from it and they move on. And I would just add this, James, this issue of this model of failure and success is worldwide. It's cultural wide. It doesn't matter. I hear from people from every different country. I have an app on my phone that from people can type in comments from our website. And I hear from people from the wildest countries. And I think to myself, wow, they have the same problems. This is not just America or Britain or Canada. This is Laos and this is Nigeria and it's Australia and it's Asia. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is everywhere because I can relate to it. I mean, when I've seen you do that, people are thinking differently instantly because when you've got that model and framework to think of, you just look at the landscape different. You know, I've seen it firsthand, the impact that you've had on people just doing that. So there you go. I mean, is everything sales? Everything in life? Or is some things not sales?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question.
You know,
I
what should we have for lunch? I mean, it doesn't feel like sales, does it? It doesn't, but yet
Right.
there's someone's open to influence from someone else.
Yeah. I guess in a small way, if you are attempting at every moment that you are attempting to ask or influence someone to solve a problem, whether it's your problem or their problem, I suppose you could say it's sales. And if it's not that, then it's not sales.
Right,
But
got
so
it.
much, right? But
All
so
right,
much of
well,
life is influence.
it is, yeah. When it comes down to sales, it's a transfer of communication though as well, isn't it? You got to get your communication right. You got to choose the right time, you know, and sometimes that's a challenge in sales, isn't it? You go too early, you try and close the deal, and you've not asked enough questions.
You know, it's funny that you'd bring that up because if you are a big TV watcher,
Yeah,
and I like some stuff on Netflix. I got rid of cable. I don't watch any of the sitcoms, but I used to watch like the sitcoms from the 1970s and 80s, like these goofy comedies, you know,
yeah.
these silly sitcoms. But when you look at TV shows or even movies and you break it down, every problem in these shows comes down to poor communication. Meaning, even in a Jane Austen novel, like where do the problems come? Because somebody has gossip and told someone something else they shouldn't have, or someone has a secret that they should have shared to open the communication, but they were unwilling. And so art, TV shows, books, it's all based on communication, and most human problems come from a lack of courageous communication. That's what I have seen. And so in sales, so much of I think sales challenges come from not willing an unwillingness to have maybe some transparency, some vulnerable conversations, to make ask the and I said this really early in our conversation, to ask the tough questions early. In other words, to find out, is this a person whose problem you really can solve, or maybe they should go elsewhere? And so, yes, you were so right. Communication is at the heart of, I think, our world as humans, which is why when we were all sequestered a few years ago, I think that was so difficult. Luckily, we had the technology to continue to communicate. But can you imagine if we didn't, how isolating that is? We are collaborative beings. And so communication, and if you want to make communication and sales go together, which I think they do, then yes, sales is ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Do you know what? I think that could be the biggest benefit of becoming incredible in sales. You develop courageous communication because you have to. It's a byproduct of it, isn't it? You take yourself on a journey of learning sales, you are going to become a great communicator. And courage is can you sell without courage?
Absolutely not. No.
Why do you say that so firmly?
Um, well, I guess the true answer, let me back up. Can you sell well with without courage? And the answer to that is no. Can you sell with your question was, can you sell without it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the answer is yes, but poorly. Because you will make so many
Yeah.
mistakes without having the courage. You'll end up doing what we talked about, which is you will um, well, let me just talk about this for a second. The selling style that cares about relationships but doesn't care so much about results is typically a person who does not sell with a lot of courage. And here's why I say that. Now, a lot of people listening to this might think to themselves, well, wait a minute. If you care about relationships and care about other people, that's serving. That's exactly what sales is. To sell is to serve. What are you talking about, Andrea? I mean, so what if they don't care about the results? But the problem is that then what happens is you become really an order taker, and you become at the mercy of your customers. So you end up saying yes to a lot of things that you shouldn't. You end up selling people the wrong products oftentimes, or the wrong solution, because you're unwilling to ask good questions because you don't want to look pushy and salesy. And this is the big thing. You're usually unwilling to suggest and recommend the true solution to the problem because in your mind, it's too expensive, it's too time consuming, or, and this is the big one, they're just going to say no. And you're so concerned with looking like a sharkish salesperson, the one that cares only for results and doesn't care about relationships, that you never sell with courage. And so you never maximize your potential. And what you end up doing is just selling to people what they think they want, and you're never in the driver's seat. You're never proactive. You're always just doing what the customer wants, and that is not selling with courage.
Well, look, I mean, as you're saying that, I mean, courage is got to be indispensable, hasn't it? It's got to be the one thing that we want to encourage. We want to encourage people to have the courage to do it. You know, no one's ever come up to me and said, James, the reason I failed is because I had too much encouragement.
Right.
That's how we put. And by the way, I totally copied that. That's a one-liner from a gentleman named Paul McGee. He wrote a book called Sumo, and he said that. And ever since, I thought that is a really good point. I've never heard that neither.
I love that. Yeah.
All right. I've got some quick questions for you. Here, Andrea. What's your favorite book?
Oh, I have so many. I guess my favorite book is probably and is this personal development category, I imagine?
Yeah, probably. But look, our listeners are all personal development junkies, all right?
It's probably The 4 Agreements.
All right. So the 4 Agreements, Louise.
Don Miguel Ruiz, yes.
Don Miguel Ruiz, yeah. So never take it personal. That's one of the agreements, yes. Yeah,
that's
a good
right.
book. It's a Buddhism, built on Buddhism.
What was that?
It's built on a Buddhism philosophy.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really good book. The 4 Agreements, yeah, definitely for calming down, controlling of emotions. All right. You said that you've got Netflix, I believe, but you didn't do the sitcoms. All right, great. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, my favorite movie. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably A Few Good Men.
Oh, A Few Good Men. There we go. Why did you choose that?
A classic. I probably because I've seen it like literally 20 times. It's like if I'm flipping the channels and it's on and it's halfway through, I usually end up getting sucked in and watch till the end.
So Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Yes, that's right, Tom Cruise. Are you a Tom Cruise fan?
I am a huge Tom Cruise fan. Yeah. And I really respect his incredible work ethic.
Do you know, he once came to London to do a premiere in London on one of the Mission Impossibles, and there was a massive queue of people afterwards, you know, outside. Tom Cruise is there getting their autographs and all, and usually they stay around for a couple of minutes and etc. But and I took note of this. Because I just so respected him for it. He wouldn't go until everybody who wanted an autograph got one.
Jeez.
Do you know how long he was there? 6 hours.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah. But that just shows you, look, has everyone got what they wanted? Right, let's go. And he had fun with people, and there you go. So little Tom Cruise, favorite holiday destination then?
Favorite holiday destination? Well, we've only been there one time, but it was, you know what? I'll change my answer. Cancun. Cancun, favorite holiday destination.
Relaxing, beach.
Mhm.
There we go. Right. If you could have one superpower, anything, what would it be?
I don't think this would do me any good, but I would fly. I think that would be super cool.
Nice. All right. You would fly to Cancun.
I would.
With Tom Cruise.
That's right.
All right. Are you an early bird or night owl?
Oh, definitely early bird.
Right. How early?
Not that early. I'm 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Get on with the day. Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
You could have one day in anybody else's life, current or past. Who would you choose?
Well, I talked about him a minute ago. I would probably, just because it popped up, I would probably choose Elon Musk. I am very curious what his day is like with all those very high-end businesses, and
Yeah.
can't even imagine
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. Wouldn't it, being-
I'm curious how he would, how he deals with what I can imagine would just be fires from every different business, and how he manages that.
That would be a good day. Being in Elon Musk's, you'd learn a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So, who've been the three biggest trusted advisors that you've ever had in your life?
Trusted advisors. Definitely my husband, Richard. I know that's kind of an obvious one.
What have you got from Richard? What has he given you?
Oh my heavens. He really was well, first of all, he was the one who opened the door of personal development to me. In college, I took a class. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and in one of the classes, we had to read. And this sounds bizarre for criminal justice, but the book for this entire class was 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And I'm really embarrassed to say that I was not impressed with I just found it boring. It was like, oh, 7 Habits of Highly Successful.
Did you have to read The Weapon? I mean, that is a serious book. The big one.
No.
It was the small one.
It was the small one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I just had a horrible, I had a bad attitude about it. I think it was because I was working and in school, and I was kind of miserable. And so I was given this gift of reading this book and barely read it. I just read what I had to. And then when I met Richard, and he introduced me to Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
And we went and saw Zig Ziglar speak in Los Angeles. And I was so ready at that point. I was not the same person as I was in school, no longer quite so miserable. And then I was just devouring. I was like, I want all the books. I want all the tapes. I want all the stuff. So that was probably the biggest gift that he's given me. And now he jokes that I have surpassed him. He's like, you have studied, you've been a student all these years. And so he likes to joke that I've
Remember that first conference you went to with Zig Ziglar?
I do remember it. It was, well, we went to a few. This was in Los Angeles. It was one of those really big, 80,000 people in a stadium type conferences. And there were other speakers there as well. But I remember that he was there.
What did you learn from Zig at that conference?
I think I just learned to be enthusiastic about sales.
Right.
His passion was
definitely got it. You definitely got it.
His passion and excitement for selling was infectious. It was contagious. It was amazing listening to him.
So it actually make you all want to be incredible salespeople afterwards.
He really did. He really did. He made you love it. He made you want to learn how to be a great salesperson, not for you, but to just be excellent. He was such a motivator.
Which is what you do now, yeah. All right. So Richard is your biggest, one of your top 3 trusted advisors. Who's the next 2?
Yeah. Probably the next one would be a good friend of ours, Patrick Galvin. He is a speaker. We met him through the National Speakers Association. In fact, we went. This is kind of a funny story. We had moved up to the Pacific Northwest here in the United States. The National Speakers Association chapter, Oregon chapter, was having a Christmas party. We weren't even members of the chapter yet. And I told Richard, I said, we're going to go to this Christmas party. Now, this is an important lesson about going to events, because when you go to things and when you put yourself out there and you meet people, there's nothing that has been more important, I think, to my career, my business, than going to events and meeting people and doing things that were outside my comfort zone. I didn't want to go to a Christmas party where I didn't know anyone. How horrible, but we did it. And and Patrick Galvin, it was at his house. He was the president of the chapter at that time, and we met him. And we got totally involved in the chapter. He's been a great friend. We've helped him with books. He's helped us with things and been a great, not so much a mentor, but just somebody that we can call anytime and bounce an idea off of. And it was all just because we went to that party.
There you go. All right. So we got Patrick Galvin and
And let's see, the last one, I guess, would be Jennifer Powers. And she also was at that same party.
It was a good party.
It was a good party. There was a lot of smart people there. So when you have a chance, go to things. Don't stay home.
Take home message. Say yes. Go.
That's right.
All right. So you've had some really good people around you helping you. So for our listeners, if they had to do one thing from everything that we've discussed today, what's that one thing you'd be encouraging them to do?
The one thing is have the courage to ask and develop a couple questions that you ask. Make it a practice to practice them. But in a nutshell, James, it's have the courage to ask.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a lot of circles here on my notes, by the way, because there's loads of things that I always choose my favorite part of the session. And I'm going to go with have two things, simple and elegant. You just got to be prepared for two things. Number one, a tiny fact about yourself. Prepare that. And number two, a tiny fact or a question that's relevant to the person. Keep it really simple. That was my favorite part. What's been your favorite part today?
I guess I really liked the discussion about sales as a life skill, because that's not something that I talk about so often. So that's fun.
Well, it is. And you talked about it incredibly well. So on behalf of everybody right now, thank you very much, Andrea Waltz. Welcome to the BizX podcast, sharing with you all of the secrets and winning formulas in both business and life, with powerful lessons from guests like Frank Bruno, Nick Jenkins, Brad Sugars, Bianca Westwood, and many, many more. Yet, the sad reality is that over 80% of you aren't subscribed yet. And if that's you, hit the subscribe button now and help us grow this channel so that you can get 1% closer every single week to achieving your dreams in both business and life. Let's do this.